A desert planet with twin suns.
Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form?
Use my knowledge. Much to learn, you still have.
Welcome back to Twin Sun Talks, folks. I'm your host, Jonah Liu. Thank you so much for listening. And welcome to this week's episode. In honor of the new Kenobi trailer, which dropped last week, I'm going to be talking about Inquisitors today, because if you've watched the trailer, you know that the Inquisitors make a pretty prominent featuring within the trailer, so I know that not everyone is super familiar with them, so I wanted to go over them real fast. So, without further ado, let's dive into ARC Trooper training.
Gentlemen, who wants to be an ARC Trooper? I do, sir!
So once again, there were a few Inquisitors who were featured in the new Kenobi trailer, and Kenobi is streaming on Disney Plus starting on May 25th, so we got that to look forward to. But like I said, I know that a lot of people may not know who the Inquisitors are because they made their first appearance in Star Wars Rebels, which is a little less popular than most of the other Star Wars shows. And also, with that in mind, I'm going to be doing a roadmap through Rebels with a good friend of mine, Caleb Oliphant, coming up here, hoping to do it for my ability to speak in April, because we were supposed to do it for this one, but I had some technical difficulties with my mic, and the audio is really, really bad. So we're going to re-record it and put it out hopefully pretty soon for y'all. But the first question that I think is fair to ask is, who are the Inquisitors? And the Inquisitors were trained Jedi hunters who operated under the Galactic Empire. So after the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire, most were former Jedi who were brainwashed by Darth Vader and Darth Sidious. They were not technically Sith, so they were Force users who used lightsabers and all that, but they were not considered Sith because, according to the rule of two, there can only be two Sith. So they were more, they were closer to like Sith assassins, kind of like Asajj Ventress and Savage Opress were. So, with that in mind, these Inquisitors were tasked with hunting down survivors of Order 66. And they're really, really cool, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them in live action. Let's go into a brief history of the Inquisitors. So Sidious had the beginnings of the idea behind the Imperial Inquisitorius program in the days of the Clone Wars, because as you see, this is the first arc in Season 2, so I think it's the first 3 episodes. Darth Sidious hires bounty hunter Cad Bane to abduct Force-sensitive children using the Jedi database of prospective younglings. And these younglings were brought to Mustafar to be brainwashed. And ultimately, this plan was thwarted by Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano. But Bane successfully abducted 3 younglings. There was a Rodian, a Nautolan. There's another one I don't entirely remember. But these children, or maybe there are only 2. Maybe there are only 2. I'm not entirely sure. But it was a pretty interesting arc. And it's cool to see how Sidious was already thinking about these things way before Order 66 happened. And after Order 66 was executed, Sidious knew that some Jedi would manage to survive. So because of this, he tortured former Jedi and corrupted them into joining the dark side and pledging themselves to his service. And so after an incident that saw 2 Inquisitors go rogue, they were given new headquarters on the water planet of Nur. And this is actually seen in the Kenobi trailer. We see this facility. It kind of looks like Darth Vader's castle, but it's this specialized training facility, which also operates as the Inquisitor headquarters. We see this in Jedi Fallen Order for a brief period of time. The Inquisitors also worked alongside Purge troopers, who were specialized stormtroopers tasked with hunting down Jedi, and some of them were actually made up of the last generation of Fett clones produced. So there are a lot of theories going around that we saw this squad of clone cadets walking around Camino when it was being evacuated, and a lot of people think that those are going to be Purge troopers, and they're going to be trained at Mount Tantus, and then they're going to be moved over to Nur. So that's really sad, but also kind of interesting. Once again, Purge troopers are seen in Jedi Fallen Order as well, working alongside the Inquisitors there. And Jedi Fallen Order, for those of you who don't know, is a video game following Jedi Padawan and Order 66 survivor Cal Kestis, as he sort of makes his way through the galaxy and tries to survive in a galaxy who is trying to kill the Jedi. So they also had kind of iconic rotating lightsaber blades. And there were double-bladed lightsabers that were used for intimidation. And obviously they could use these lightsabers too, but they rotated on like kind of like a detachable rail, which looks pretty cool, until they used them as like helicopter blades. I thought that was pretty stupid, but I digress. They notably hunted down members of the Ghost Squadron, who were the main characters of Star Wars Rebels. And they also hunted and killed Jedi Master Eth Koth, who was fairly prominent in one episode of the Clone Wars. I think he's a super, super cool Jedi. And he actually left the Order and went into hiding, raised a family, and then he was found by Vader and the Inquisitors, and they ended up killing him, unfortunately. And then, as we see in the trailer, they were tasked with hunting down Jedi Master Obi Wan Kenobi, which is going to be super interesting to see. Next, I'm going to go into some known Inquisitors, and I know that this may not be a comprehensive list. Obviously, there are some numbers missing. Well, actually, the 4th is really the only one that's missing, and the 1st. But these are all going to be like 2nd sister, 3rd sister, 5th brother, stuff like that. And I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about each of them, but some of them don't have too much information about them. So first of all, the Grand Inquisitor, who is probably the most prominent, most iconic. We do see him in the Kenobi trailer, which is very exciting. He's a Padawan Jedi Temple Guard. So the Jedi Temple Guards were the ones that had like the special masks, the yellow golden robes, and the yellow lightsabers. We see them in the Clone Wars. But they were part of Jedi Temple security, and there was actually a pretty steady rotation of them, so they weren't always in that position. It was kind of like, almost like serving time in the military. Some Jedi were just selected and instructed to serve in that position for a period of time. But he joined Sidious after being promised access to the Jedi archives, and he's very prominently featured. He is the first Inquisitor that we saw in Star Wars Rebels, and he's really scary, really intimidating. He was the most powerful and most successful of all of the Inquisitors, and his downfall was extremely surprising to the Empire and to his fellow Inquisitors. The second sister is the, well, I don't want to say that she's the main antagonist without knowing for a fact, but I'm pretty sure she is the main antagonist of Jedi Fallen Order. One of y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, but she was former Padawan Tila Sunduri and was captured shortly after Order 66 and was one of the Inquisitors tasked with eliminating Jedi Cal Kestis. The third sister, Reva, was a former Jedi, and we don't know anything about her, but she made her first appearance in the Kenobi trailer. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm excited to learn a bit more about her. The fifth brother is of an unknown species, which is interesting. He was a former Jedi. He was pretty prominently featured in Rebels after the Grand Inquisitor was killed, and he is extremely strong. He was also featured in the Kenobi trailer, which is very exciting. And yeah, no, it's going to be super interesting to see where they go with these characters and how they're going to operate in live action. The sixth brother, formerly known as Bill Valen, was a former Jedi who lost part of his arm to Vader's blade as a lesson in loss. So he actually cut off his left forearm as a lesson in loss. And he was extremely arrogant, very brutal, but also not very strong, because he actually fell to Ahsoka Tano, an unarmed Ahsoka Tano, in combat, and his lightsaber was actually his lightsaber crystals were the ones that Ahsoka Tano purified to make her iconic white lightsabers that we see her operating with during the time in Rebels and then past that. The seventh sister operated with the fifth brother in the Rebels show. She was Mirlaran Inquisitor, or Miralon. She was a Miralon Jedi. See, this is the issue, that I don't know how to say any of these things. And you would think that I would know how to say Miralon because I just did a species profile in my last episode about them. So I'm just dumb. It's okay. But she once held a position in the Jedi Order. She's a former Jedi. Very creepy, very sadistic. But yes, she is featured in Star Wars Rebels as well. The eighth brother, also featured in Star Wars Rebels, was a Tyrellian Django jumper. Was a former Jedi, very athletic, very nimble. So he, the seventh sister, and the fifth brother all had an altercation with Darth Maul, Ahsoka Tano, Kanan Jarrus, and Ezra Bridger on the planet Malachor outside of the Sith Temple. And I'm not going to spoil what happens to them, but they don't fare super well against those opponents. And you may be thinking, oh, but Darth Maul is also a bad guy. Well, Darth Maul was one of the individuals who was targeted during Order 66 because essentially Order 66 was primarily designed to take out Jedi, but it was also designed to effectively eliminate any Force-sensitive threats to the Emperor and to Vader. So, kind of interesting in that regard. So yeah, the ninth sister also involved in the Jedi Fallen Order game. She was a large Dawoodian brute, former Jedi Mansa Tide, and she's just massive. There's not much else to say. I've been told that she is very difficult to fight in the game. I have not played the game myself, but she looks pretty cool. Rounding out the list, we got the 10th brother, who's a former Jedi Master, Proset Dibs. I think he's only in the comics. He's supposed to be pretty mysterious and cool. Don't know much else about him, but that's about all that I have. But yeah, no, the Kenobi trailer is super, super exciting. You can ask my roommates. I audibly gasped whenever I saw that it had come out. And it's super, super interesting. We get to see Owen Lars, a little look at him. We get to see a young Luke Skywalker and Kenobi watching over him. And we see Kenobi operating in some different locations other than Tatooine, which is pretty interesting. So we'll see how that plays out. And then, most interestingly, I think, we got our first official image of Vader recently. But yeah, between all of that and the music, Duel of the Fates was playing over the trailer, and it just gave me chills. And I love the Inquisitor's little spiel about the Jedi code being like an itch, and that eventually he's going to want to scratch that. He being Kenobi, so I'm super, super excited. Can't wait for May to come around and for us to enjoy that together. And you already know I'll be doing my reviews and breakdowns every time an episode comes out. But that's about all that I have for this episode. If y'all have any other questions about Inquisitors, feel free to ask, and I can go into a little more detail on any of them. But they're pretty cool. They're very interesting and relatively unknown characters. And yeah, it's going to be a fun time. So this wouldn't be a proper episode if I didn't leave you with just a little bit more. So my more today is that the Grand Inquisitor was voiced by Jason Isaacs, who plays Lucius Malfoy in Rebels, and I was actually really hoping that they would get him to play the Grand Inquisitor in live action, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. But that also being said, I don't want to be negative, but the Grand Inquisitor in live action looks kind of lame. And so I'm hoping that, if nothing else, they change his eye color, because his eyes are supposed to be like, the white of his eyes are supposed to be black, and the iris is supposed to be yellow, and I think that would automatically make him 10 times more intimidating if they made that change, which would it would be tedious, but it would be possible to do in post-production, and they have a couple months, so we'll see. Maybe they pull that out, but But that being said, that's about all that I have for this episode. Make sure you stay tuned either this week or next week for my this month's edition of The Ability to Speak Does Not Make You Intelligent. I think I'm just going to solo it this time, do something like essentially a guide to all the Star Wars movies. So if you're trying to impress your significant other or your friends or your family with Star Wars knowledge or just plot points of the movies, then you can go ahead and listen to that. But that being said, you've taken your first steps into a larger world. May the Force be with you, and I will see y'all in the next episode. Bye, friends.